The Earth has changed many times and transformed heavily from when it first formed. How life came from non-life is still a big scientific mystery. However, we do have a current best guess for the beginning of life on Earth, around 3.8 billion years ago. But before we get into that, let's start from the beginning and take a trip back in time. The Earth didn't always exist and wasn't always hospitable for life. Approximately 4.6 billion years ago, our solar system was a cloud of dust and gas known as a solar nebula. The solar system settled into its current layout around 4.5 billion years ago. Earth's rocky core formed first, with heavy elements colliding and binding. Dense material sank to the protoplanet's center, and lighter material built up the crust. The Earth suffered a considerable impact sometime during its formation that catapulted pieces of the young planet into space and formed the Moon, which took up orbit around the young world. This was known as the Paleozoic era, when the Moon was still very close to Earth and likely caused huge tides of more than 300 meters high. Hurricane-force winds blasted through the planet, and the evolutionary process began. The new Earth was a hellish place during this time. The flow of the mantle beneath the crust caused the movement of large plates of rock on the planet's surface. Collisions of these plates created huge mountains and volcanoes that continually erupted, shooting out vast amounts of lava and gases. Reefs were made in the oceans during this time. The protoplanet barely had an atmosphere, but as the planet cooled, gravity captured those gases from the volcanoes. Water was deposited on Earth by collisions of many comets and asteroids. Aside from water, another critical thing for life to emerge on our planet is where it lies from its star, the Sun. Earth sits in the Goldilocks zone, which puts it close enough to the Sun to allow liquid water to exist on the Earth's surface. Before life even began or had a chance on Earth, radiation from our star was the primary source of energy on our planet, just as it is today. The early Earth had very little oxygen, if any at all. It's theorized that solar energy provided the jump start that transformed simple organic molecules into more complex ones, transforming them into the building blocks of biology and life. Life likely developed in undersea alkaline vents and was probably based on ribonucleic acid, RNA, a nucleic acid present in all living cells, rather than deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA, an organic chemical containing genetic information and instructions for protein synthesis. At some point during this time, a common ancestor gave rise to two main groups of life, bacteria and archaea. Although exactly how this happened is still uncertain, tiny microbes and single-celled organisms evolved for billions of years and began feeding on methane. Around 3.6 billion years ago, evidence of viruses was found, and some argue that viruses could be as old as life itself. Sometime during Earth's early history, the planet turned towards habitability when a group of microbes known as cyanobacteria evolved with the ability to angle light and water into energy and release oxygen in the process. Dissolved oxygen caused iron in the oceans to rust and sink to the seafloor, forming striking red banded iron formations. Between 2.4 and 2.1 billion years ago, something incredibly remarkable and disastrous occurred in this early life cycle. The poisonous waste produced by these evolved photosynthetic cyanobacteria led to oxygen building up in the atmosphere, causing anaerobic bacteria to die off, leading to the Earth's first mass extinction, which some call the Great Oxidation Event. How can oxygen be toxic? Oxygen became toxic because of the high levels and overwhelmed the natural antioxidant defense system of any living microbe or bacteria at the time. These cyanobacteria, in the form of algae, ate themselves to death and caused global extinction. But the worst was about to come. Around 2.3 billion years ago, the Earth froze due to the Great Oxidation Event, and volcanic activity slowed down over time. The ice melted, indirectly releasing more oxygen into the atmosphere. This led to the Neoprotozoic era, where protozoans such as paramecium, amoebas, and melanocytic evolved. The first animal cells differed from plants, and these cells began feeding on plants, becoming the first herbivores. However, during this era, the Earth froze again at least 2 more times, which stunted evolutionary development. However, life finds a way, and during this time, fungi, worms, and other small bilaterally symmetrical animals survived and evolved. Fast forward to the Paleozoic era, complex life forms, including fish, arthropods, mollusks, and echinoderms, began to develop. Plants started to show up on the surface of the earth, and air-breathing animals began to walk, crawl, and slither on land. Meanwhile, sharks, horseshoe crabs, and starfish began to fill the oceans. At the beginning of the Devonian period, insects took form, and ferns were the common land plant. A prehistoric jawless fish with bony armor called the cephalaspis and crabs, giant sharks, hagfish, and ratfish evolved. This gave way to the Carboniferous period, where the climate on Earth was thought to be tropical with little change during the seasons, and gave rise to a new wave of strange creatures. Plants covered the Earth during this time, and the organic deposits of plant debris formed the world's first coal deposits, which humans are still burning today. The growth of these forests increased oxygen levels in the atmosphere, which peaked at around 35% compared to the 21% it is today. This alone might explain the size of the giant creepy crawlies that emerged. Some animals and insects may have developed in water and grown more significantly to protect themselves against the high oxygen levels at the time. One was a giant insect called Meganeura, which resembled modern-day dragonflies with wingspans of 63 to 68 centimeters. One incredibly detailed fossil of a giant dragonfly that died 320 million years ago was discovered to have a wingspan of 0.75 meters. Deadly poisonous centipedes, 2 meters long, crawled around with mammoth cockroaches and scorpions as giant as 1 meter long. Amphibians began to diversify, and reptiles evolved into forms like modern-day lizards, with a backbone allowing them to live and move on land. These amphibians were also massive, and some species were predatory, resembling modern-day crocodiles, armed with sharp teeth and reaching lengths of almost 6 meters long. Like modern-day crocodiles and alligators, some evolved to have thicker scaly skin, which solved the problem of their bodies drying out if they were out of the water too long. For the first time, amphibians evolved to lay amniotic or air-breathing eggs on land, and that changed everything since these animals could now live out of and away from water sources. The Carboniferous period gave way to the Permian period began approximately 300 million years ago, just 50 million years before the dinosaurs. All the continents during this period existed as one giant landmass called Pangaea. The first large plant-eating and meat-eating animals evolved during this time. Some of these creatures could be mistaken for dinosaurs, but they were more closely related to mammals and reptiles. One of these bizarre creatures was Diplocerapsis, which looked a little like a salamander that averaged around 1 meter long, but its head was shaped like a boomerang. Another new reptile on the planet was the iconic Dimetrodon, which grew to about 5 meters long and had a large sail on its back, likely used to regulate its body temperature. During the Permian period, mammals were increasing in dominance. The biggest of these were creatures classified as Gorgonopsians, a class of giant bear-like animals with different teeth specialized for various functions. These animals could be either herbivores or carnivores and varied in size from less than a kilogram to more than a ton. One group of these creatures was known as cynodonts. Their name means dog-like teeth, and these animals had social behavior, and some fossil evidence shows they hunted in packs. In the oceans, fish with actual bony skeletons evolved, sharks and rays flourished, sponges and coral. On land, insects evolved with adapted mouth parts that allowed them to pierce and suck. But around 252 million years ago, the Permian era ended abruptly due to a cataclysmic event that caused mass extinction. In 2001, scientists made a chilling discovery. A massive comet or asteroid, similar to the one that put an end to the dinosaurs, wiped out the giant reptile predecessors 200 million years earlier. But how did scientists come to this conclusion? Molecules of helium and argon gas were found locked in carbon in high proportions that could have only come from space. The asteroid or comet was estimated to be between 6 and 12 kilometers wide. Researchers say the strike would have released energy 1 million times greater than the biggest earthquake of the last century. Aside from this discovery, there's some evidence that current-day Siberia and China experienced volcanic eruptions on an unimaginably massive scale, and those eruptions created dust and ash clouds that blocked out the sunlight. Not only that, but over 1 million years, 3 million cubic kilometers of lava poured out of the ground, covering the entire planet in a layer 10 meters thick. The asteroid impact and volcanic activity were the proverbial blasts from a double-barreled shotgun. The Earth was once again a wretched place. The combination of these two events resulted in the Great Dying. 90% of all marine animals and 70% of all land animals alive during this time perished. This would be the final chapter in the evolution of life on Earth, and it would be seemingly wiped out completely. But a new age would begin after this, and the age of the dinosaurs would begin. Would you like to see what happened after that great Permian extinction and how the great dinosaurs got their start? If so, let us know in the comments, and stay tuned here. We thank you for watching.